You know, they're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Not one of you will do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I am gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? MCR family? Another daily edition of the show. I know we are late. I do deeply apologize. We're an hour late. Usually we are live 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. in the UK. We're an hour late, like I've said. I was hoping I would surprise everyone and have the Skype line working today, but it's not working. I've been trying, and I've been failing. However, you can still call in domestically, or you can still call in internationally. It just might cost you a little bit. 323-870-4051. We're going to talk all things combat sports from boxing to MMA in that order, and obviously callers at the end. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, share the show, all that YouTube shit, and obviously on podcast form, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Kyle, Santiago, the Boxing Idiot, Real Nija, pound for pound supporter right there. Toussaint, and I already said the Boxing Idiot. Yeah, he's in there twice. What up? Hope everyone's having a great day so far. It is a Thursday, just an average Thursday. Kind of a slow news cycle, like I would say today. The week overall has been sort of slow, I would say, because there's no big UFC. There's really no big boxing event. I know there's obviously Tyson Fury, and Carl Frampton fighting this weekend. You can see our preview of that from yesterday's show on podcast form or on video form on YouTube. But that's not that big. So it's sort of just a dead period. The dog days of summer, the dog days of August, it is what it is. But of course, it can't be even a slow news cycle day without Anthony Joshua in the news. And obviously the WBO announcing that they may or may not, haven't really decided yet, that they may enforce their mandatory status for Dylan Whyte for their WBO belt after the Povetkin fight. So, by way of Sky Sports and the Boxing Idiot, I see your comment in the chat. No, that's not a big event. Come on, let's be honest. I'm not really going to read into it. Go check out this article by Richard DeMille and James Delhan. Hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Over on Sky Sports and see what the WBO is saying about it. But it's one of those things where could AJ, in theory, get an exemption from this and fight whoever he wants? Probably still, let's be honest. But even then, we have Deontay Wilder on his side saying that I'm not fighting on that date. I'm not fighting AJ, etc. So, okay, like it is what it is. Obviously it's AJ. We got to talk about it. It is news. But come on, like we know what this is. This is just the WBO just saying something. And what they're saying can be reversed, can be overturned, can be followed through. A lot can happen here, and we still don't know what's going to happen. So we gotta wait till after AJ Povetkin. Gotta wait till after, obviously, this weekend and see what happens with Wilder and Fury, and see if we find out any sort of more concrete news about that April date. Because right now it's still up in the air. Even though the WBO is saying this, it doesn't mean much, in my opinion. Just not saying testing the water to see how fans react. But the WBO doesn't really care about that. Like, the WBO innately is not going to make more money because the fans are happier. Like, they still get the 3% or whatever percentage they get from each fighter for their sanctioning fee regardless. And it's an AJ fight. So regardless of what it is, they're going to collect their paycheck because it's AJ. 3% of $10 million is a lot of money. And that's just AJ's side of it usually. So I don't think it's if this was, let's say, Eddie Hearn coming out and talking a lot about the Whyte fight, which he sort of has, but not really, then that's where you get the whole testing the water, seeing how the fans react, because that's the promoter side. He has to worry about the fans' reaction. The sanction body, they give two shits. And honestly, we have a long case study, a long evidence, rap sheet of the sanction bodies definitely not caring about the fans in any way, shape, or form. So I don't think it's that at all. I think this is just the boxing saying what happened to the super champ status with the whole Oleksandr Usyk thing. Look, for all those that, and I know probably the boxing idiot, even though his name says idiot in it, I know he's probably not an idiot. He probably knows this. The sanctioning bodies have clauses in all of their rules and regulations that give them outs, that allow their committee to overrule any of these rules. So let's say it's a mandatory rule they have in their regulation, and they're trying to enforce it. There's a way they can get out of it. All they have to do is just have a committee hearing, and they all vote, who's ever in that committee, to overturn it. And the WBC has that sort of clause and language in their rule set, and so does every other one. Same with the WBO. So they can come out and say super champ status for Usyk 1 week, come out the next and say we may enforce we may enforce Dylan Whyte as the mentor. We may make an eliminator fight. We may do this stuff. We don't know, because they can. The same reason why the WBA can have regular and interim belts, and the WBC can have super champs and international and silver champs and all that bullshit. It is what it is. Shout out to the sanctioned bodies. Always been fun. Salute to them. But let's move over to the next news of the day, which I was actually kind of surprised about. I remember this being talked about, but I think it was actually going to happen. Adonis Stevenson versus Oleksandr Gvozdyk set for December 1st in Montreal. And this is coming by way of the WBC. Mauricio Sulaiman sort of dropping this gem to us. And I'll be honest, I think this is awesome. Not only is Adonis Stevenson going to have, in theory, one fight a year, he's going to have two. On top of that, it's not only just one tough fight a year, it's going to be two tough fights. Forever haters there are for Oleksandr Gvozdyk, because there are some that definitely detract what he's done, he is still a top 10 opponent. He is still a credible contender to this belt, in my opinion. And Badou Jack and Gvozdyk back-to-back, it's a little good year for Adonis Stevenson when he's had a lot of bad years. So salute to him, because I think this is a good sort of turn. And let's see what happens. And also, with Gvozdyk being from Top Rank, something to sort of look at ahead of, what's going to happen in terms of networks. Is this going to be on Showtime? Is this going to be on ESPN? Highly curious about that. Nothing set in stone for that part of the news. But still, fantastic fight. I think Stevenson should be the favorite heading into it. Because I think if we were going to see that fundamental style that's really working behind the jab, working behind twos and threes consistently, not a lot of head movement, but good basic fundamentals. If that was going to beat Adonis Stevenson, it would have been Badou Jack, and he got a draw. And I think Gvozdyk is a little bit worse than Badou Jack in terms of those sort of categories. So again, Stevenson should be the favorite, but good fight, credible fight, and surprising to see that as well. We're gonna move over to a little bit of the fight that was today with TJ Doheny upsetting Ryosuke Awasa for the junior featherweight belt. I'll be honest, I really don't know either of these guys, even though I credit myself for being a little bit of a hipster. I've heard of TJ Doheny a little bit, but not a lot. And it was a good back and forth affair. I know Teddy Atlas was screaming at 3 a.m. in the morning about how Awasa was robbed, etc. I thought TJ won this. I thought TJ won this rather easily as well. I thought his use of feints, his use of range was just far superior and allowed him to control most of the fight, in my opinion. I think TJ was able to either stay so far on the outside and use enough feints to really keep Awasa, even though he was always chasing him, always coming at him, never really active. He never really went there for went for broke there, I would say, while chasing Doheny down. The boxing is saying he had it for Awasa 114, 113. It was close. But I thought TJ was just the better fighter. He was the better boxer. Again, his use of feints, level changing, always giving him an odd look. His ability to dart in on the inside, land a combination, uses reflexes, a head movement, get out of there. Consistently was better, I would say. That, to me, was the more effective overall approach by both men, or by either man. Awasa, to me, was just chasing him down consistently. Was always following him. And there was times, obviously, where TJ would get caught, in the mid-range, and get caught with the combination, and he would get caught with one for sure. But I still think overall TJ won that fight slightly. And just still, even if you think Awasa won that fight, I don't think you would say that he's the better overall boxer. TJ clearly has the greater tool set. Before we get to any more news, remember to call in 323-870-4051. Hit the like button, subscribe, share the show. And also, shout out to everyone in the chat. Again, Boxing Idiot, Fighter IQ, a.k.a. Ron the Mastermind, a.k.a. go check him out, TBV. Eric Rosas joining us as well. So, tell me what you think about the fight below. TJ Doheny upsetting Ryosuke Awasa. I thought it was a good fight. I thought it was a fun back and forth fight that even if you don't really know both guys or either guy, it doesn't matter. It's a fun affair. And interesting to see what's next for Doheny, who is, I think, one of very few Irish champions, like legit world champions in history, I want to say. I think that number is like under 10. The Boxing India saying the shock was the scorecard. It's crazy seeing guys get a decision in different countries. I would say Japan overall is pretty good about that. Like, for all the, I don't know what the equivalent is maybe in Europe, but I know over in the U.S., like the Mexican regional scene is always sort of made fun of. Like, it's looked down on. Like, the joke in L.A. gyms is if you're fighting in Mexico, you're padding your record. Like, fighters will make fun of other fighters in the gym if they're going to Mexico to have fights, and others are staying in L.A. Like, that is a joke amongst fighters. So, I don't know what the equivalent is in Europe, but in Asia, that's really Australia. Japan is one of the best scenes, I would say, in terms of just professionalism, even though they really don't have that much of a regulatory body. It is a big sport over there. It's usually on like Fuji TV. It's seen for tens of millions of people. Like Ryota Moreta, who's a average middleweight, let's be honest, who's, borderline top 10 just because the division's kind of top heavy. He's getting watched by 15, 20 million people in Japan. So I think it's not really surprising to me because that's a main market in the Asian market, I would say. Similar to like the U.S. and the American market, and maybe similar to the U.K. and the European market. those are the big bodies of regulatory bodies, sanctioning bodies, overall where fights are taking place. Things sort of being on the up and up in at least some sort of way in terms of corruption. Those are the three main markets, I would say. If this fight was in Thailand, let's say, a little bit more concerning as to, what the decision might be, etc. But yeah, that's my overall opinion on that. But moving over to some news for DAZN, which, not, it's not a fighter announcement, but hey, for sportingnews.com, which is now being headed by Andreas Hale, one of, I would say, the better journalists out there. Sugar Ray Leonard and Brian Kenny in talks to call DAZN fights, sources say. I think this is good overall, because I think the young boxing fan like me, they're either going to buy DAZN and pay for it and watch it, or they're just going to stream it illegally. There's nothing you can really do to get us over. So what you're trying to do is get over that 35 to 55 range, or year-old range of boxing fans. And people that grew up sort of knowing Sugar Ray Leonard, listen more to mainstream sports on NBC and stuff with the Brian Kenny, who I forget what sports he does exactly, but he's more of a mainstream guy. I think that this announcement is good to draw in those fans, those middle-aged fans that are more accustomed to terrestrial TV. We'll talk more about, back in my day, Sugar Ray Leonard was the best, Roberto Duran was the best. Those fans. This will interest them. People like maybe us, people like maybe me, the hardcores, maybe younger fans. This really does nothing for them, but at least you get names. Like Sugar Ray Leonard is still a name, even though I don't think he's the greatest commentator. And Brian Kenny, again, a guy that I'm not too fond of in terms of commentating boxing. He's still a name, though, and that does something in the mainstream U.S. sporting world and community. It just does. Casual sporting fans will hear this news and might get a little more interested about it. Leonard Sterling saying you don't know how to score a fight. I hope he's not referring to me because we're agreeing. Saying TJ Doheny clearly won 7 or 8 rounds, 115, 113, or 116 to 112. TJ were good scorecards. I did score for TJ Doheny. Leonard. And actually, shout out to you, Leonard Sterling. One of our more wiser fans in the sport, I should say, on YouTube. But to digress to a fight announcement, Devin Haney versus Juan Carlos Borges getting announced. I forget for the date. September 28th on Showbox. And it's whatever. Juan Carlos was last seen fighting Mikey Garcia in, 2014? And that's really all I've known of him. He fought to a draw with Roman Rocky Martinez 2011, some shit like that. It's whatever. Devin Haney, to me, I'm ready for him to take a step up. But, God knows what he has in his bank. When we talked about on last show with guys like Josue Vargas having $8.1 million in his bank account. God knows what guys like Devin Haney has. It's just curious to see what he will do. Also, just for you to know, this card will be the first one that is actually a Devin Haney promoted card. So, when we talked about yesterday on Devin Haney promotions, this is going to be the first one. And it's on Showbox. So, Devin Haney at, 19 years old is making God knows what in terms of his fighting, and now he's making that promoter check. So, salute to him, man, because he... In terms of the business savvy side of it, I don't know how. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know how. I don't think I've heard of a guy this young figuring out the industry this soon, and I think he's done it, and that's pretty incredible. Even though this matchup does really nothing for me, other than being probably a showcase for Devin Haney. But just interesting to see, what will happen, especially Devin Haney Promotions, Devin Haney going forward with this new venture. And I talked about this other news that we're going to get into. Maybe a week ago, I just slid in there that I was looking for all the gate revenue information for Mike Garcia versus Robert Easter. I know this is stitching back to a few weeks ago now to that event, but I finally got word back from the California State Athletic Commission. Finally got all the information about the gate, etc. And I really wanted, and this is going to be our transition to MMA. So those that want to tune out for maybe the next 20 minutes or so and come back for callers, you can do that. Remember, calling number 323-870-4051. But we're going to juxtapose Mike Garcia versus Robert Easter, that event in Staples Center, July 28th. And then the week later, in the same venue, UFC 227, TJ Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt 2. And just the economics of these events. Garcia Easter, both Mike Garcia and Robert Easter were guaranteed $1 million and $500,000 respectively. Their gate revenue per California State Athletic Commission was under $900,000. So think about that for a second. And again, we're just talking about gate revenue. You have a reported payout of just the main event, not the co-main, not the rest of the card, not the personnel, nothing. It's just the main event fighters, $1.5 million in guaranteed. And obviously, we're going to get back to that number in a second. And then they only made $850,000 in the gate revenue. So that pays off Robert Easter his guaranteed check. And some of Mikey's, about half. But again, to piggyback off of news we heard from Eddie Hearn and others recently, because it's not just Eddie Hearn. Everybody in the world is talking about this in terms of in the media, within the industry. How much is Mikey Garcia actually making? Is he actually the highest paid PBC fighter? Is he one of the highest paid fighters in America, period? Eddie Hearn threw out the number of $3 million guaranteed per fight. And obviously that would be, his actual guaranteed disclosed purse was $1 million in this fight. So he got $2 million on the back end. God knows where Robert Easter got, right? So in theory, let's just stick with the idea that only Mikey is getting back end money, not Robert Easter, because we have no idea what Robert Easter is getting. So we only know figures because of Eddie Hearn, who's been negotiating with Mikey, is that $3 million number. So now we have, $2.5 million that they need to come up with. That the promoter of this event, I forget who it was. I think it was Tanguson. I'll check that in a second. But it's not going to be in the gate. So now you got to think about TV deals. As we know, with Anthony Joshua versus Joseph Parker, that market value for that fight was $2.1 million for Showtime. HBO bid on it, 2.1, they matched it. Again, we need $2.5 million, right, coming from whether TV rights, whatever it be. Do we think that Showtime is paying Garcia Easter more than Anthony Joshua Parker? Now, obviously, Garcia Easter does more ratings, so maybe it does. So I'll give him that. And again, we're going to the idea that Robert Easter got no back-end money, and also the idea that nobody else in the event is getting paid. We also have no international TV rights for this event. So we have all that on the table, right? Just think about, put that all on your mind, keep that all together. Now over to the next event, the week later, in the same venue, which had a $3 million gate, right? Over twice the amount that Mike Garcia, Robert Easter had in the venue the week prior, which is interesting to me. And they had a pay-per-view buy rate of 300,000 pay-per-views, which roughly is around like $18 million, right, give or take. So you have 18 million, you have around over $20 million in just pay-per-view buy rate and gate revenue. Over 21 million. And at most we have 3 million for gate and TV rights for Garcia Easter. So you have, on theory, about at least six times the amount of revenue for this UFC event. And yet the highest paid fighter on that card, which was the longest reigning UFC champion in UFC history, was paid under $400,000. The B side in the main event of Mike Garcia versus Robert Easter was paid $500,000. Mike Garcia got paid $1 million reportedly, maybe $3 million total. They only made $850,000 at the gate. Only made, let's say, generously $3 to $5 million in total revenue. And yet they're getting paid out insane amounts. Now, why am I talking about this? You may be wondering. There's obviously a lot of dark money, to use a political term, a lot of dark money in combat sports, period. Somehow, the boxers in boxing, obviously, have figured out a way to tap into that and collect revenue from it. Obviously, there is money up front on the up and up, so to speak, non-corrupt money, non-dark money in the UFC and MMA that the fighters aren't getting, clearly. There's a reason that they were able to sell for over $4 billion. Their profit margins are insane over at the UFC. So, again, if you're a fighter out there in the UFC and you listen to this at all, because I know a couple of you do, Project Spearhead, Leslie Smith, Collective Bargain, Unionize, because you guys are getting ripped off. And to be honest, to switch back a little bit to Garcia Easter, I don't know how that's sustainable or how that's even possible. And I'm not even going to really get into that because I believe somehow they figure out a way to get money. Maybe it's just a lot from the TV networks, but again, it's only one TV network that's there. Like, they didn't get anything from the UK because it was on Sky or Box Nation. Dean Street Dreams and Entertainment asking a good question, a clarifying question, saying, does gate revenue count merch and concession? No, it does not. It does not. But again, that's not $2 million worth, right? Like, that's like where are they finding this money? Whether it's Al Heyman and still having that investing firms, hedge fund, whatever it was, whether it's that, I don't know. I do not know. I am just presenting these numbers that I know, and it does not add up to me. And I am not a mathematician. I'm not an accountant. Dean Street Dreams and Entertainment asking another question, saying, what about ad revenue? It's just Showtime. There is no ad revenue. It's premium network. If it was, let's say, on Fox Sports or Fox or any other main channel, there would be ad revenue. But if that ad revenue actually goes to the network or to the promoter, I don't know. I believe it goes to the network. And I'll actually ask around this because that clarifying question, because that's a good one that I personally just do not know, to be honest. I believe if the TV network, let's say, pays a licensing fee to a promoter to have the event, to have the licensing rights to it, that's an upfront amount, right? Similar to, let's say, Showtime to whatever event. But the difference is Showtime doesn't have ad revenue. They have subscribers, so they're hoping that they gain subscribers off of that. Similar to, I would say, different to Fox Sports, which has the ad revenue to sort of make that licensing fee back, is my understanding of it. But again, #MattStats, I'll look that up for you and clarify that with somebody that actually has probably better understanding of it than me. Dean Street Dreams Entertainment saying there's also arena advertising, ring placements, things of that nature. Again, I understand, but it's not $2 million plus worth. It's we're being generous with that $2 million, and it's actually $2.5 million. Like, we still have the entire payout of the rest of the card, and then everyone that's working the event, the production crew, etc. You know, the promoters take their chunk of their money. What do you think? The promoter eventually has to make money off the event, right? So you got to think about this. It's essentially that I don't know how it does it. I don't know how it makes money, but they figure it out. To use Georgie's phrase, it's the mafias in a way. Like they just figured it out, and I really have nothing else to add to it other than UFC fighters. You are obviously not collecting nearly as much at the top percentage in terms of like the top elite as boxing does. Clearly, I forget who. I think it was Mookie Alexander reported that some like 34. It was a few dozen. I want to say, right, a few dozen boxers got guaranteed over $1 million payouts this year. In MMA, I believe there's only been half a dozen reported over $1 million guaranteed payouts in its history. Not just this year, in its history. So, and again, they're making money. I mean, over $20 million in just pay-per-view and gate revenue in their last event, and yet the best fighter ever got paid $380,000. Something's not adding up, clearly. But we're going to digress fully into MMA now. I know, I'm sorry. Remember, we're going to, after this, take callers 323-870-4051. The prospect saying, man, fuck these sanctioning bodies. Insert what's going on here soundbite. That would have been funny. Per Ariel Helwani over at ESPN now, saying Curtis Blaydes versus Francis Ngannou is scheduled to be the main event for the November 24th card in Beijing, China, per sources. The fight has been agreed to, but not yet signed. And this is a rematch, by the way, for those that just do not know. Man. Poor Francis Ngannou. Poor Francis. Poor guy. Obviously, the UFC just does not like this guy. And I'm curious as to why. Curtis Blaydes has been flawless since losing to Ngannou when he was relatively young in his career. Ngannou has been up and down since then. Has had 2 losses in a row. Desperately needs a tune-up. And now, rather quickly after his last fight, now fighting a guy who's seemingly putting it all together to be a force in the division. Damn. And obviously Curtis Blaydes being a pretty good wrestler now in the heavyweight division. Ngannou having extreme trouble with that. I don't know. This just seems just bad. It seems like bad matchmaking, in my opinion. Even though I think it would be a fun fight, I don't know. If you're Francis Ngannou's team, this makes 0 sense. If you're Curtis Blaydes, it makes a ton of sense. If you beat Francis Ngannou, you get that revenge back. You sort of, I think, take the hype away a little bit from Francis, slightly. But I think it's still just a bad matchup to make on paper. I think it makes little to no sense right now for the division, and it is what it is. But we're going to head into our last piece of news, or not really news, but just topics of the day before we head into callers. So remember, 323-870-4051. But on this day in 1965, Joe Frazier made his professional debut. Smoking Joe Frazier. One of the best heavyweights ever. So shout out to him. Just want to remember one of the greats, R.I.P. And also speaking of R.I.P. Aretha Franklin, because that makes me emotional. Why you emotional? Man, that's not good. One of the greats in music. Just sad. But yes, that's all it for news and topics of the day. We're going to go head into callers. Remember, there is PFL tonight. Ray Cooper III versus I forget who again. I'll be watching it slightly, but excuse me. We're not going to do a live fight chat for that. Come on, that's ridiculous. Excuse me. Sorry, I had to burp there. We're going to head into callers. Santiago, the man, the myth, the legend. And Ron, remember, press 1 if you want to get in the queue. Santiago, how you doing?
Doing good. Just driving and trying to survive in this sauna box I call a car right now. I saw that apparently Stevenson versus Gvozdyk was apparently in the works, and I'm just kind of like, that's a fascinating matchup in my opinion, just because like I was impressed with Adonis' performance, against Badou Jack, and I have to wonder whether or not that'll follow him into this fight, because I do think Gvozdyk is a good fighter, but given Adonis' penchant to be a one-arm bandit at times, it could prove to be his downfall.
Yeah, but Gvozdyk isn't nearly as fundamental and just overall, good as Badou Jack. I think he's a level below Badou Jack.
No, like I said, I think it's a fascinating matchup. I definitely don't think that Gvozdyk is just going to go in there to, knock out or give like a super tough fight to Adonis Stevenson, because Adonis Stevenson has proven that he is at the world caliber level. We saw what he did when he first burst onto the scene, and like I said, I was impressed with his performance against Badou Jack. So it'll be interesting to see how that fight plays out, in my opinion. I think it's a good fight for both fighters to see where they're both at in their careers, especially given Adonis' age right now.
Agreed.
Like not a lot of people realize how old he really is right now.
Agreed, but I think you're right that he looked pretty good in his last fight against Badou Jack. I think that sort of like young Adonis Stevenson we sort of remember slightly was there, and I think against Gvozdyk, if he even has that sort of performance, I think he knocks out Gvozdyk relatively early, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, if we get the same Adonis that put up the effort he did, and the Adonis that first came onto the scene, we're gonna see Adonis in prime form, and that's the Adonis we all love when it comes down to it. Don't really have much to say regarding the mixed martial arts topics at the moment. And obviously right now I'm busy working, so I just wanted to talk about that. But if you have any questions regarding any of the other topics, feel free to ask. Otherwise, I will talk to you later.
See you on Saturday, Santiago. Or obviously, you might call in tomorrow on tomorrow's show, so might talk to you then. But Ron, the mastermind over at TBV. Ron, how you doing, man?
All right, my bad. I was on mute. What's going on, man? You got your call system going on? Congratulations, man.
Thank you, Ron. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Just getting off work and see you working. I see that I get to talk about a little MMA for once. So, I wanted to say that this Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blaydes, man, is like the worst fight for Francis, man. Because even though he came in the scene and he destroyed this man, it looks like Curtis Blaydes has gotten a lot better, and if this is the way that he leaves, it's like it undoes everything he did in MMA. That's how I feel. And it's just like an ugly way to get this rematch for Curtis Blaydes. I think it's a great opportunity for Curtis Blaydes, but if Francis loses, man, then the UFC just needs to like dump that guy if he has those 3 back-to-back bad performances.
But I mean, the thing is if you're the UFC, it's your fault for doing that. You put him in 3 tough back-to-back fights. You clearly needed a tune-up after Stipe, and you threw him in against Derek Lewis, which made 0 sense. He looked awful in that, and now you're throwing him in again in a fight that he will struggle in. To use a term that like Luke Thomas used to use all the time, is promotional malpractice.
I agree with you 100%. I mean, I don't know if it's like Francis doing, UFC's doing, or both. But obviously the Stipe fight was clearly for the hype. They got a lot of casuals in, and then, Francis did not perform. And so now at this point, I don't know. I don't know know what to do with Francis. I really don't. You know, he had the most hype going into the fight, and after that last fight, even though like UFC did give him that fight that probably wasn't the fight that he should have went into, he didn't do anything in it though. So can you blame the UFC for Francis's performance with what's his name?
Derek Lewis. You can, because
Derek
think
Lewis.
about Francis Ngannou, the mental state he was in heading into the Stipe fight, and then getting absolutely demolished for 5 brutal rounds. And let's not forget that even though I think the narrative after that fight was he was taken down a lot, he got beat up on the ground a lot, people forget he got pieced up standing up in that fight. Stipe caught Francis multiple times standing up with punches that rocked Francis Ngannou. And then you throw him in after that fight, after really his first huge loss, not only in MMA, but in the UFC, that was devastating, that was brutal, where he got rocked significantly in against a devastating knockout artist like Derek Lewis. Of course he was going to be cautious. He had PTSD going into that. He didn't have time to mentally get back into how to fight. There's a reason why when boxers get knocked out viciously or have a brutal loss, they take the long road back. They fight scrub.
Absolutely.
Because it's not a physical thing. Francis Ngannou physically is a much better fighter than Derek Lewis. And same with, I would say, Curtis Blaydes. Physically is a better athlete, but it's the mental side of it. And as the promoter, if you are promoting Francis Ngannou, if you want his best interest and the long-term health of his career so you can make money off of him, then yeah, you should have known before making that Derek Lewis fight, hey, maybe he's going to be really tentative here. He's going to be gun shy. He's not going to be sure of himself. And maybe this is not the right matchup for him, for us. And they didn't. They did the exact opposite of that.
But let's be honest, though. You didn't expect that type of fight to happen. I don't think anyone expected that type of fight to happen from both ends.
I expected Derek Lewis to win a maybe boring decision, actually. I did expect that, but not maybe in that exact way of it being boring. I thought both guys were going to gas out after 3 minutes, and then we're going to see them just sort of clinch up for the next 12 minutes. But again, I think it's the UFC's fault for making this scenario. It is not Francis' fault. It's not. Sometimes it is not the fighter's fault for what they get themselves into. Sometimes it should be their team, whether it's his management, his agent, or his promoter. And again, this is something that is foreign in MMA because promoters are a little bit different. In MMA, our perception of them is a little bit different. But in boxing, it's assumed that a promoter is going to take care of his fighter and make sure the best thing is there for him. Sorry, go.
But isn't that like what UFC and like MMA is like praised for? It's like making the fights like sometimes too premature or just making them happen. So is this another case where it's just like, oh, you know, poor Francis, or damn, another exciting matchup?
And,
you know, I mean.
And to piggyback off of that, Bayside Boxing in the chat says, so Matt wants UFC to adopt a boxing-style matchup system where promoters have mismatches and tune-ups. No, I think it makes common sense to where if you have a loss, especially a devastating loss, you should not be thrown back into the wolves and back in the lion's den. That just makes zero sense. Like, if you want the best fighting the best, then why would you want a guy coming off a huge loss to face a guy like Derek Lewis who's on a winning streak? That's not the best fighting the best. If they're both on winning streaks, they're both doing good, then that's when you match up that pairing. That's my opinion of it. If a guy's coming off a loss, there's no reason you should expect him to fight the best opponent out there. He's coming off a loss. Now, a fighter, let's say, like,
do you think this is a favor for Curtis Blaydes? Like the fact that Curtis Blaydes is like been on his great win streak, and then he's probably not going to get obviously like DC or even Stipe. So it's just more like a favor. Like, all right, we'll allow you to avenge your loss. Maybe this is a favor for Curtis Blaydes, if anything.
I think it's more of a slight to Ngannou. I think with what Dana Whyte has been saying about him in the media, with Joe Silva being gone, I don't know really what Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard in terms of control have when it comes to Dana White. It seemed like Joe Silva back in the day was really his own man, his own entity, and Dana White's tantrums really didn't affect matchmaking too much. But this seems like tantrum Dana White affecting matchmaking, in my opinion, more so than a favor to Curtis Blaydes. It just so happens it helps Curtis Blaydes.
Hey, man, look, you know the MMA stuff. I definitely say that we need to get you media credentials since you got your call. So whatever we can do to support you to get some media credentials for UFC and stuff, just let us know. We'll support you.
Hey,
I'll let some other people chat in and keep up the good work, Matt.
Thank you, Ron. Hope you have a good time over at TBV later today in about 10 minutes, I believe. 13 minutes when TBV starts over at the Boxing Voice on YouTube. I think Bayside Boxing, the chat's being a little bit sarcastic here, saying, I'm with you, Matt. I think McGregor could use one fight before Khabib. That's funny on so many levels. But, I think Conor may be a different scenario because obviously he was in MMA, he's not coming off a loss. And boxing is, but MMA is not, right? So there might be a little bit of difference there. But a fighter that's coming off a brutal loss should not be expected to fight a top 10, top 5 opponent. We expect the guys that are on a run. We expect the guys that are reigning to fight the best. That's where the idea of, I think, what the UFC started, in terms of making the best fight the best. We're not boxing. We don't marinate fights. I get it. I understand the tagline, the PR perspective of it. But again, if you are the UFC, if you are in the UFC's best interest and the fighter's best interest, then yeah, tune-ups are necessary sometimes. Like even like a Jose Aldo, Jeremy Stevens fight. I think that's a really good comparison because obviously that wasn't a tune-up. That was Jose Aldo coming off back-to-back brutal losses to Max Holloway and then thrown back in there with another top 10 opponent, Jeremy Stevens, who also has insane knockout power, right? And he won. Jose Aldo won it. In the first round, great body shot knockout. But that doesn't happen all the time. It just doesn't. Sometimes we get Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw too. And then you look at like Demetrius Johnson, Henry Cejudo. Again, I think that event was such a perfect personification of this issue. When a fighter takes a loss, you rebuild. You just do. When a fighter gets a brutal loss, you don't come right back to that same guy. Like, fighters just mentally, 99.9999% of them just cannot do that. And if you are his manager, his promoter, or you are that fighter yourself, don't do it. Don't. But that is it for callers today, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize for being late. Like I said, I'm trying to get the Skype line up and ready for all of you international, all of our UK listeners. Because I know there's a lot of you. There's about 25% of our listener base is from the UK. So I want you guys to have a voice on this show too. I worked all day trying to get the Skype line ready. It's not. Hopefully by tomorrow I can get it ready. Again, no promises though. I'm not a sound engineer, but I'm doing my my absolute best to figure it out. I hope everyone has a great day. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hit the like, share the show, subscribe. Go to patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio to help support the channel. Because of you guys on Patreon, we got this Skype line early. Due to another Patreon member that wanted to donate a little bit more on the side. Thank you, I appreciate it. They want their name to be anonymous as well. I appreciate that. It's every day I'm just thankful that I'm here. I'm able to do this. And like Ron says, I can't wait till I can credential my first fight in the UFC. I credentialed some of the biggest events and biggest fights in boxing. Conor McGregor, Floyd Mayweather. I remember being in the press scrum for both those guys. Great times. Can't wait to do it in the UFC. Obviously, this channel needs to be bigger. We need you guys to spread the word, tell friends, subscribe to the channel. We got to reach 1,000 subscribers for the end of the summer. And yeah, Be back tomorrow. Same time as always. Have a great day. Peace.